A shady, sketchy car dealership tried to scam me out of the car I was trying to buy after I flew out to their dealership just to get it. But after being confronted with this bait and switch, the entitled general manager of this location mockingly told me that if I didn't like it, then I should just leave a bad review online. So I decided to get some revenge and maliciously comply, resulting in them losing about $50,000 over the next 2 to 3 years. And I've honestly never been happier to watch karma take its course. Here's what happened. So the city I live in has extremely inflated vehicle values, especially compared to the surrounding areas. If you buy the same car from a neighboring state, you can often save about $4,000 without even really trying. When I buy a new vehicle, which happens about every 3 to 4 years, I always look in the surrounding states just to compare pricings. This story happened about 5 years ago, and the malicious compliance is still ongoing to this day. I was shopping for a brand new car, and I found one that matched my specifications about 12 hours away in a neighboring state, and it was priced about $5,000 below what I was seeing. After looking up flights, there was a one-way direct flight that took me to their local airport for about $175. Now, if I include the gas money that I'm going to use to drive back, I was looking at a total of maybe $275, which would save me about $5,000 overall. So I knew it was absolutely worth it in this situation. I reached out to the dealership, I negotiated for a little bit, and I agreed on a price. I let them know that I would be flying in to pick up the car, and I offered to pay in full in advance of the flight. They told me that all they needed was a $1,000 deposit and that the car was considered mine. We signed a contract and I paid the deposit, and then I booked the flight for 3 days from then. But it's right about here that I saw my first signs that things have gone wrong. When I showed up at the airport, the dealership was supposed to pick me up as this had been arranged in advance. A quick phone call later and I ended up grabbing an Uber just to take me the 20 miles to the dealership with the promise of them covering the cost. And I thought to myself, okay, no big deal either way. Well, the second sign that things were going wrong was when I showed up to the dealership. The salesman that I had been speaking with asked me if I wanted to walk the lot with him to look for a few cars. And yes, he said cars as in multiple cars. Questioning what he meant by this, we walked into the lot to see all these cars that he was talking about. Now, were these some special type of gold inlaid, full self-driving, full self-flying amazing mobiles? No, they were definitely not. When I point blank asked to see the car that I was buying, you know, the one with a specific VIN number in the signed contract with a deposit on it, I was told it was no longer available. So the salesman offered to show me similar cars, which would have been fine if we were able to come to some similar terms on pricings. But all these cars were outrageously priced. They were way too expensive for my taste. Fast forward about 2 to 3 hours, and I'm now convinced this dealership never had this specific car on the lot, and that this was 100% a bait and switch gone wrong. The dealership was unwilling to sell me a similar vehicle at a similar price to our negotiated one. We were about $5,000 apart, and they were unwilling to pay for the flight costs for this bait and switch scenario. A heated discussion ensued between myself and the general manager, where he finally said to me, "Go ahead, leave a bad review," but then stated that I wasn't getting any free money from him. I took an Uber to a nearby hotel and I booked a flight home the next day, costing me in total about $750. So this is where my malicious compliance comes into play. You see, this dealership had an average Google rating of right around 4.5 stars and had around 400 total reviews, so it supposedly was a pretty good dealership. Well, that night while I was sitting in the hotel room, I had some time to burn, so I spent a couple of hours creating new email accounts just so that I can leave multiple reviews for this dealership. And after all was said and done, I had left around 20 one-star reviews over the course of that night, and then sort of stopped caring about the reviews. At this point, my focus shifted to recovering my lost travel expenses. A few days after getting back, I sent the dealership a demand letter for $750, which they very promptly ignored. Since we had done the original contract with the deposit in both states, I was allowed to file a small claims court to sue in my state, which is exactly what I did. The dealership never showed up to court, and I received a default judgment for $750, and I did collect that, by the way. It took a few certified letters, a few phone calls, and about a year, but I did get a check for $750. As you can imagine, I was still not a happy camper. What they had done was wrong on so many levels. All my friends knew the story about how these people tried to bait and switch me, and the fact that I flew to the dealership on a one-way ticket only made it much worse. So they had all left a bad review or two, but nothing more than a normal mad customer. Now, I don't know how this next part started or how it ended up lasting as long as it has, but at some point I had some time on my hands, and I left a bad review for this dealership. and I left just one. Not two, not three, only one. In doing so, I noticed that all the reviews I had left right after leaving the dealership were gone. They were probably taken down for being fake, or because I left so many at the same time and the dealership reported them. I wanted to make sure this dealership wouldn't do this to someone else, so the next day I checked to make sure that one bad review that I had just left was still there. And when I checked, it was. And since I was thinking about it, I went ahead and created another account and left another 1-star review. Well, fast forward 2 to 3 years later, and it has now become a habit. Every time I have a few minutes to spare, I create a new account and leave a 1-star review for this dealership. Their current rating is 1.9 stars with nearly 3,000 total reviews, and I am personally responsible for at least half of those reviews. When you open the dealer's website, one of the large banners that flashes across the screen advertises that you will get $50 for a 5-star review. By showing your review to the salesman, they'll give you a $50 Visa gift card. It has been this way since about a year after this bait and switch occurred, and right around the time the 1-star reviews began to accumulate. Now, assuming I'm responsible for half of their reviews, and the fact that the dealership only has about 3,500 total reviews, they have paid $50 per review for at least 1,000 reviews, and likely more than that, meaning they have implemented a policy to pay for reviews and have spent about $50,000 doing so. And even with this incentive, they still have seen their average rating drop consistently ever since telling me to go ahead and leave a bad review. And honestly, they got exactly what they deserved. Wow, that is insane that they bait and switched you like that. I think I would lose my mind if I got there just for my car not to be there. Like seriously, you paid a deposit and you literally took a one-way flight out there just to get the stupid car and drive it back. Like that's an entirely different level of sketchy. It's just not even funny. And the fact that the general manager didn't even have a heart. Like you trusted him and he completely just blew you off, instead trying to sell you a more expensive car just because they got you on the lot. That's super disrespectful, and in my opinion, it completely justifies all the actions that you did, because they really set out some bad karma into the universe, and they basically brought this onto themselves. But I think overall, the way you got back at these people and the way you played the long game, in my opinion, is completely hilarious, as these people absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my stepson and his newly pregnant girlfriend move into my place with my wife? Because right now, my wife and I are having a fight over this, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My wife and I have been married for around 3 years. We don't have any kids together, but she has 2 kids from a previous relationship. She has a 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old male. For reference, we're both in our 40s. Now, I have decent relationships with her kids, but due to their ages when I met their mom, I never assumed a father-type role, and they never expected me to fill that for them. Their biological dad is involved in their lives, and we all get along pretty well. My stepdaughter is at college, so we don't really see her very often. My stepson Joe lives a few hours away from us with his girlfriend, and he works full-time. A couple of weeks ago, Joe called my wife and asked if he and his girlfriend could visit. My wife was very excited because she hadn't seen Joe in a while, but Joe never visits for fun. It's almost always when he needs something, and he knows that my wife has a harder time saying no if he asked her in person. So I wasn't surprised at all when Joe and his girlfriend excitedly told us that they found out they were expecting and that his girlfriend is 9 weeks pregnant. After the initial excitement and tears from my wife, Joe dropped the question I knew that was coming. They want to move in with my wife and I while they get their feet underneath them because their current one-room apartment isn't big enough for a baby. My wife looked at me and must have sensed my hesitation because she said this is something that we all need to discuss first to make sure it will work. Joe and his girlfriend agreed and told us to ask them anything. My wife asked a few questions about whether or not this was planned and what their plans are besides moving in with us. Joe and his girlfriend started talking about how their apartment could work if absolutely needed, but it's tiny and there's no separate room for the baby. They could also save a lot of money by living with us and get a better place sooner than that. Then, Joe's girlfriend said that it wasn't planned, but they are both excited to be parents. She said that she had to switch birth control due to a hormonal imbalance, and that Joe hates to use protection, and this just kind of happened. Now, Joe then made some really inappropriate jokes about using protection, and I had been mostly quiet up to this point, but after Joe made that joke, I spoke up. I told them that it sounds like both of them knew that the girlfriend was in a transition period with birth control, and they knew this sort of thing could happen, and yet they still chose to be stupid about it. I told them they are idiots if they think I'm going to be okay with them moving in with us, especially with a baby when this situation was completely preventable by them not being dumb. Joe's girlfriend started crying, and my wife and Joe immediately started consoling her. My wife scolded me for being too harsh and that we all still have a lot to talk about. Well, my wife and I have been fighting about this ever since. She thinks that we need to help in any way that we can, but I think that since Joe and his girlfriend were dumb enough to get themselves into this, I don't want to end up being responsible for a baby when they inevitably do something dumb again. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think them moving in with you is a complete mistake, and I would not want to deal with that in the slightest. Because I think the original poster's onto something. It really does sound like Joe and his girlfriend are just incredibly irresponsible. Like if they didn't want a kid, they very much should have used protection, and that really is their own fault. And for them to be like, ooh, can we move in with you? It's not because they want to have a better place. It's because they are in over their heads and they don't know what to do. So they're hoping that mom and dad can step in and try to help with this situation, which I just don't think is going to add up. Like, think about it. If they move to where you live right now, they're going to have to quit their jobs to do that. And unless they work remotely or something like that, I can really see them becoming such a massive nuisance in your life. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. It seems like they're having a big wake-up call about the realities of becoming a parent, and if they didn't want that to happen, then they really should have been more careful. Am I the jerk for not wanting either of my future sister-in-laws as my bridesmaid at my future wedding? Because honestly, these people have been rude to me for such a long time. But right now, I'm being argued against by my fiance and his family to change my mind and allow them to be my bridesmaid. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. My fiance and I have been together for nearly 8 years, and we've been engaged for a little over 1 year. We've also been living with each other since 2021, and around this time, an animosity between his parents and one of his sisters started to develop. We've had some ups and downs, usually starting a down period when I say or do something they don't like or agree with, such as having some kind of boundary. Now, I could list every infraction over the last few years and end up with an encyclopedia level of volumes where 99% of those would make you laugh. But these down periods have usually ended up making a compromise, which more or less has me having to make a 180-degree turn just to try and keep the peace. Now, none of these boundaries are unreasonable, by the way. For example, I would ask them not to turn up at our house unannounced or uninvited, or to only invite us to dinner over the weekend. We work an average of 12-hour shifts on the weekdays, and this is just to name a couple. However, these two in particular cause the most grief because apparently it means that I don't like them. Now, when it comes to planning for our wedding, we're having a small ceremony maxing out at about 50 people. We agreed we only wanted a small wedding party with 2 bridesmaids, 2 groomsmen, no page boys or flower girls, and I only chose my sister as a maid of honor and a close friend as my bridesmaid. We sent out the save the dates, and my fiance handed his personally to his family. Well, no sooner had he done that, had his mother gotten in his face and demanded to know why neither of his sisters were in the bridal party. My fiance mentioned that we were originally going to elope, but felt that this excluded family, so we opted for a small wedding. His mom then stated that she would prefer us to elope, and then said that I should remove my close friend as a bridesmaid and have one of his sisters instead. Now, originally, he had no problem with not having his sisters as bridesmaids, but now he's seeming to have changed his mind. But I think that his mom getting in his face has caused some emotional conflict in his mind, and he just wants to keep her happy. Now, because I usually have to give in to any of their demands, I don't want to change our arrangements, and I want this aspect to remain solely my choice. And it's also more to the point that I've never asked him to include one of my brothers as a groomsman in his party. That is completely his choice. But now this has caused a whole argument where I'm being called a jerk and spiteful because I don't want to give in. I've always been told that the wedding is about the couple, and it's not their responsibility to keep everybody happy with their choices. And given their history, I can't trust that they'll get their way this one time and then not demand more changes the closer we get to the date. So I don't think I'm being unreasonable, right? I mean, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You're not the jerk at all, and it seems like your soon-to-be in-laws and extended family are incredibly entitled and love to just trample all over your plans. Like if it somehow doesn't appeal to them, then they don't want to hear about about it and they want it changed, with your fiance being the key to that problem. He clearly is easily guilt-tripped by his mom or his sisters, and he will just start changing things just to make them happy, when in reality, he should be trying to make you happy. Like, this all sounds super obnoxious and I would hate to have to deal with these people. So it kind of makes sense as to why you would want to elope. Like, this just doesn't seem like it's worth the trouble, and if anything, it seems like it's just a massive headache across the board. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think it's a great idea for you to say, nope, this is my wedding, you don't get a say in it. Because it really seems like with these people, if you give them an inch, they will take 7 miles. And in my opinion, I think it's better to set this boundary now than have to deal with this for the entirety of your life. The mother of my daughter's friend demands that we get in a relationship together, or else she's going to ruin the friendship that my daughter and her daughter have finally cultivated. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a widower with a 12-year-old daughter. My wife passed away 6 years ago, and it was super hard on both me and my daughter. I've been focused on being a single parent and a father, and I'm trying to be the best that I can be. And with the support from family plus therapy for the both of us, we are managing okay. And I do know that it was very hard for my daughter to make friends for a while after this all happened. For the past 2 years, she's had this really good friend. They are pretty much inseparable. I've seen the difference this friend has made to my daughter's life, and it's been amazing. The friend has a mother who is also a single parent, and we started interacting more than a year ago when our daughters got closer, and I thought we were pretty good friends. Well, a few weeks ago, she told me that she had feelings for me. Now, I do not feel the same way, unfortunately. She's a great person, but I just don't feel that way about her, and I was honest about it. Well, when I said that, she did not take it well, and I empathized. I think we've all been there. But in the past 2 weeks, she asked me again. She said things like, oh, I just want you to give me a chance, and how she feels we would be great together, and that it would be good for the kids. And then 2 days ago, she said she might have to restrict her daughter from being friends with mine because it's a painful reminder to her about me. So I'm now at a point where I really don't know what to do. Her friend cutting off contact will set my daughter back and really mess with her, and I will feel 100% responsible for that. But on the other hand, being forced into a relationship feels so wrong and so weird. I mean, it's not fair to anybody. So right now I'm at a loss and I seriously don't know what to do. I'm sorry, but the mom in this story sounds insane. Seriously, think about what she's saying to you. She's giving you an ultimatum. Either you date her and get in a relationship with her, or else she's gonna take away this friend that your daughter really likes. And now you're somehow convinced that would be your fault? Like, no, this is not your fault. This would be entirely her fault for being crazy. You can't just force someone to be in a relationship with you and then turn around to try and ruin something in your life all because you said no. Like, it kind of makes sense as to why she's single in the first place. So if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be creating some distance between myself and this crazy lady. And if this lady wants to try and like ruin the friendship between your daughter and her daughter, then all of that is literally her fault. And you are definitely not to blame in the slightest. Am I the jerk for body shaming my stepsister in front of everybody? Because right now she is very upset with me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 22-year-old female and I lost 90 pounds of weight. Last week, my boyfriend and I visited my parents for dinner. Now, I don't normally visit because it's a 3-hour drive, so it's a once or twice a year kind of thing. The first thing that people complimented me on was my weight. My mom, who knew of me trying to manage my pre-diabetes, congratulated me on getting things under control. Meanwhile, my stepsister, who is 40 years old, said that I look so much better now. But I said I don't want to talk about how I look. I then decided to help my mom cook. Well, my stepsister would occasionally walk in to check in and would start again on how I look. She would say things like, see, losing weight was the best. I bet guys are talking to you more now. Or she would say, you used to have such wider shoulders. Now it's skinnier. It looks really good. Every time I just grew more and more uncomfortable. My mom tried to tell her off, but I just stopped her to avoid drama. Dinner happened and we all sat down. I was eating some flan, which is sweet and caloric, but not bad to eat very occasionally, and my stepsister made a face when she tried it. She commented that I should watch my weight. Now, this was the tipping point. I told her that I've asked her multiple times not to tell me how I look, and I asked her how she would like it if I kept mentioning her appearance. She said that she wouldn't mind. So I said to her, did you get a lot of compliments on your fake chest? I mean, it's great that you got bigger ones, your real ones were too small. Well, my stepdad is now furious, because for starters, she's broke and can barely pay her bills but spent money on surgery. And secondly, that dinner was ruined and an argument happened. After that, my boyfriend and I just left. I said goodbye to my mom and then I headed out, with my mom saying to me that we're not inviting my stepsister to dinner anymore. My stepsister then started spreading rumors about how much of a jerk I am and how I'm now egotistical just because I'm not as fat anymore. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your stepsister very clearly loved to kind of poke the bear and see how far she could get by talking about your weight. Like, first of all, that's really rude and that's completely inappropriate. So the fact that she got upset when you flipped the script and started talking about the way that she looks, in my opinion, is hilarious. This is hilarious proof to me that she can dish it, but she absolutely cannot take it. And the second the conversation is turned towards her, she suddenly is going to get really offended. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Your stepsister had it coming, and if she's unhappy, then she shouldn't have started it in the first place. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.